Hello everyone, this is Louis, and this is lesson number 24 of the FX Masters program. Today we're going to be talking about muzzle flashes. Very common thing in movies. We're going to be using, of course, an avatar, as always, inspired scene. It's part of the Avatar FX Masters of this course, it's part of the module. And basically what I have here is a clip from the film, okay, where you can see, I think it's using more parts of the movie, but I guess this is the scene that it will just better help me to explain this. So as you can see, I'm going frame by frame, by the way. What I mean by this, what I'm trying to say is that these are very quick events. These are things that just are visible for a couple of frames at the most. As you can see, I'm going one frame at a time. They quickly develop and disappear. So basically what we need to focus on is just how to quickly create shapes like the one you see right here. And they're very different from one another. Keep an eye on each one that just shows up, and you will see that it's just completely different from the rest. There are similar, shapes like this one, the basic ones, but the big cannon, they tend to have like a bigger shape here. But my point is that they're very different from one another. In a situation like this one where you have multiple guns, you don't really want to be coming up with a system where you have to do each individual gun for a particular shape, because if you just think of the number of options that you will need to create, it's going to be a pain in the ass. As always, with these courses, we know what I wanted to convey is a sense of working efficiently, being smart, recycling, the kind of things that I've been repeating over and over in every lesson so far. This is a perfect scenario for something like this. If you were to treat this as an individual event on each particular gun, then believe me, you'll be there for days and weekends, and overtime that sometimes is paid, but most of the time is not paid, especially for something like this that can be done repeatedly. Some of you may think, well, this is a perfect situation for a procedural solution like Houdini or something like that, and well, that's fine if you want to think that way. We can do it in Maya easily. It takes a few seconds actually to run a simulation for all the guns. So the way that we did this on the film is, I hope that is the way that all the studios are doing it. At Weta, we were very efficient on being smart on the way we worked and finding the simplest, fastest solution that looked good. So the way we did this is actually the compositors were the ones placing these elements on the guns. So we created like a library of muzzle flashes that they could pick from. And the cool thing is that when this scene on the film, when this part of the film, the third act, the final battle, let's say, when that part of the film came to us, I remember that it was July. I think it was July, and the film was coming out in December. We had to do probably a 30% of the film in a very short period of time. So when that time came, I think we were free of all other simulations from other parts of the film. So the entire team, over 900 people, just tackled this sequence. Very complicated, tons and tons of effects, tons of work on every department. So we needed to be extra clever on how we handled this situation. On effects, we had the luck of getting the help from about 20 what they called assistant technical directors, ATDs. These were basically people with no experience or very little experience in 3D, especially in effects. But there were extra pairs of hands and eyes and brains, so to give us a hand to kind of be able to push through this massive, part of the film. So basically, some of us developed certain tools. As you have seen so far in the course with me, this is a pretty cool way of working. So we developed tools that were friendly enough for them, that's the ATDs, to use. So basically they were running the libraries based on the regs that we gave them, right? So for a situation like this, then basically what you really want is to have a system that automatically generates random shapes. So later on, the compositor and the supervisor for the sequence can pick the ones that they prefer. You want something that will generate enough of them quickly enough. Because there's so many guns, they shoot so many times. As you can see, if I keep moving forward, right? So you get tons and tons of events happening. Having the same shape, of course, it will be noticeable. It will look, like a video game or something, of that nature. So you really want something different all the time. But there's so many of them. So thinking of a library of 2,000 different events is not crazy. This is something that shouldn't take. It's something that you should be able to run before you go home, and in the morning it should be all done. That's the kind of thing. These kind of effects are they're necessary. They will always appear in the film. You wouldn't have a gun without a muzzle flash. But it's falling under the realm of what is called CBBs, or could be betters. Could be betters are the type of things that you will add at the end of the film that will make the film better in a way, but you don't want to put too much money on them. This is kind of stuff that falls into that category. It's the kind of thing that you probably outsource to a smaller studio that's cheaper. But it's something that is definitely interesting to know how to run it, because this case will apply for, or this solution will apply for other things. At least the way of thinking, how to approach it, how to make it as automated as possible, how to wash your hands and go home early and let the computer do this for you, and let the compositors deal with it. You know my opinions about those things. It's better, always better to let someone else handle the positioning, the timing, right? Things like that, so you can really focus on the simulation and you can focus on other shots that are more important, probably. So, okay, with that out of the way, I'll just show you the rest of the stuff. You can kind of see. You can see them off from the distance, right there. We'll see some of them. You can see that when they're far away from the distance, they will only use just like a little sphere. So nothing to worry about there. All right, let's keep going. Let me see if they show up again. We don't want to worry about tracers or anything like it. We're just going to talk about muzzle flashes. Okay, they have muzzle flashes here as well. There we go. Take a look. There's not much detail. Like I said, it's an event that shows up or maybe 1 or 2 frames. So we're not going to spend too much time or effort or money in a way. Remember that, the time that time is money. That's it's clear as water, right? That's just the way it is. Your time in the studio is money that the shot is going to be adding up, and probably you want to put their resources and their money on something else, like the characters, for example. So these kind of things, we're not going to worry too much. We're just going to make sure that we have enough shapes that look interesting, so they have a library that they can play with. All right, so I'm going to keep this video just for reference. I'm probably going to rewind it a little so we're in this area here. There we go. And let's take a look. Let's see how we can do this. I have here, just for the sake of testing, for scaling, just this machine gun. I can give it to you if you want. This one came anyway for free, Turbo Squid. But anyway, I'll put it on the FTP. We're going to use this just as a reference of scaling. So let's go ahead and take a look. So I want something, okay, that, like I said at the beginning, changes shape all the time. And it will allow me to generate particles which is the easiest way to handle this, forget about end particles. No need for that. This is 2 frames. They're visible and they're gone. Let's say 3, let's say maybe at the most 4 frames. So you will never see anything that end particles will give you. There's no need for that. All right? We're just going to use regular particles. But the key here, the most important thing is that the shape that you're going to be using. What's going to be driving your particles? That's the most important thing. So we need to come up with a way to have a shape that changes over time, that is controllable, and most of all, something that we can cash out and let probably someone else handle it without dynamics, right? So how the way I see it and the way we did it, to be honest with you, is using something like this. We're gonna work. Don't worry about the machine gun at the moment. I'm just gonna focus in here. Okay, I got my cube. And you're going to see, as always with my courses, how topics that you may find mundane and I hope not boring, but I think basic, let's say. Why am I so pushy with you guys finishing the FX Power User first? It's because every single concept and tool that you're going to be using in the future, believe it or not, the most important ones are even on Maya Dynamics 1. To me, that's the most important level of all. Maya 1 and Maya 2 are the most important ones. And I believe I've been proving this in every lesson. So you may be surprised that to do the muzzle flashes for Avatar, what you will use is a soft body emitting particles from geometry, inheriting color from a texture. If you remember correctly, that's probably lesson 1, lesson, let's say 4, and lesson 6, something like that, right? So you probably, when you were doing those lessons, you never imagined probably that you were going to be using that on a big film, or that I'd used it on a big film. But that's the reality. That's the truth. So, that aside. So I get my cube. Why a cube? Because if I'm going to create a soft body, I want to have something, I want probably a sphere, right? That's the most friendly shape for something like that. But I want a sphere, as you remember from other lessons when we talked about this, is that I want, if you create just a sphere, I think we can just spend a couple of minutes and talk about this. There's my sphere, there's my cube. I'm going to make this cube probably a little bigger, just to have something similar to the sphere. Okay, that's the topology of my sphere, as you can see. This won't give me a nice deformation, having all these triangles here coming out to a point, right? I really don't want that. Probably we can just do this. Okay, I don't want this. I don't want this, all these triangles. It's not really nice when they deform. And in a case like this, it's not really that important, probably because we're not going to be rendering the actual shape itself. But I think it's a good habit, just to avoid using spheres when you want a spherical shape for a soft body or a piece of cloth. It's much better to grab your cone, grab your cone, go to modeling mode, and we're going to edit this thing, and we're going to, mesh, we're going to smooth this out. It may not look like a sphere to you, but if you increase the divisions, guess what? It starts to look spherical. Yes, this is a perfect sphere, let's say, or as perfect as it can get. But this is a better geometry. So you can see there are quads everywhere. I'm not a modeler by any means, but I know for a fact that this will deform better than this. So this is out. For something like what we're going to be working on, you need a lot of detail. So thinking that if you run one simulation, if you do it correctly, you're going to get all the muzzle flashes for the entire film. I think it's worth waiting a little bit for your computer to calculate things. If you can get all the muzzle flashes for a movie overnight, then you deserve to be at those big studios. That's why they pay you what they pay you. That's why they hire you. That's why they choose you instead of all the other thousands of people that apply. Okay, so these lessons are very important to me, and they should be very important to you, because this is the kind of thing that will separate you from the pack, let's say. So for something like this, doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter if your computer is not strong enough or if it takes a long time. Like I think I told that to someone in the support group today. Someone was telling me, well, but my computer is pretty slow. It takes a long time. That's fine. It shouldn't take a long time at the beginning when you're learning. But if you're working on a big film like this, and you need to put detail, you need to spend some time making sure that it looks good, and then putting all the detail you can, and let a beautiful simulation run overnight. That's not a problem. You're sleeping, everyone's sleeping, the computers are just doing nothing in the company. Let it rip, like they say, let it run, and put a lot of detail. This is not enough for a nice deformation. So I'm just gonna try 5. That's pretty good. I think that should be fine. We're gonna test the speed, and then we'll see if it works or not. I mean, if it's too slow for me recording the lesson, but I shouldn't be. Right, so I get my sphere right here. I'm gonna put it back in the center. It's not really, it's not a problem if you don't have it, but I think it's a good way of working. I'm going to scale this up to 2, and we'll see. Right, and what I'm gonna do is, because I'm gonna be turning this into a soft body, I don't really want history in this geometry. I think, based on what I can see, I think it's okay to have this much detail. I don't think I'm going to need more of it. But you take a look at what I have, and then you adjust yours at home accordingly, right? So I think I'm going to be fine. So I'm just going to grab this, and I'm going to delete history. Right, and I'm going to also, just for the sake of having a clean channel box, it's just something that I like to do. I'm going to freeze transforms on this guy. There we go. So we get a clean piece of geometry, no history, no smooth at all, which has a nice detail. It's all quads, it's spherical, so it should be fine. What am I going to do with this? I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to turn it using the effects menu. I'm going to turn this into a soft body. There we go. We talked about this many times, and if you don't know what a soft body is, then you're not watching the proper lesson. You should go back to Maya Dynamics 1 and start from there. I don't need to explain these things. So I'm just going to duplicate it, make some copy soft, because I need to use goals for this a little bit, and I'm going to hit create. I must point out, as always, that I'm not following a recipe here. I'm not reading numbers from anywhere. I'm just giving it a shot. And by the way, the more we get into the course from this point forward, it's going to be more like that. I'm going to be, and don't take it the wrong way, but I'm going to be improvising a bit more and more. The reason I'm going to do that is because I really want you to see very clearly, the thought process and the mistakes that I make, everything that could go wrong, everything that goes well, and then I want to start working that way. Some of the lessons, of course, I have to prepare them ahead of time, but what I mean by I'm not reading a recipe is that I don't take notes. I don't have anything open somewhere else to peek, like I know for sure the other instructors do. I have no problems. I feel no shame if I make a mistake and I start over. You know already by now that to me the most valuable thing is actually the mistakes, the things that could go wrong. It's better it happens to me. You see me fixing them, and then you learn so it doesn't happen to you. So probably this is probably the only course in the world that will just be okay making mistakes and recording them, right? It's just normal. It's part of our day, and that's just the way it is. So I think starting from this point, I'm going to start slowly working in situations where I don't even prepare anything ahead of time. Nothing. I'm just going to go open Maya. We're going to run it, and hopefully, if everything goes well, in my situation here in my country, we can start doing those things live on the virtual classroom. I can't promise anything yet, but that's actually, so you know, that's what I'm thinking about. So we can just wing it, like we say. Yeah? So anyway, so okay, I created a soft body. It's a duplicate make copy soft, meaning that on my outliner, as you may expect, I have then my machine gun, my original cube, which is hidden automatically, and my soft body cube, which has the particles right here. It's normal by now, you have done it so many times that we know that the conserve of these particles should never be 1, or at least not to start. I don't know if we change it later, but I'm so used to doing this my entire life that I'm just gonna go with that. The goal weight of the particles right now is at 0.5, as you can see right here. I think it's okay. I don't know. We're gonna tweak it later. First thing I need to know here, I need to do actually, is to get some deformation, because right now if I hit play, I get nothing. It's normal. Let's get some basic deformations. I'm just gonna go in and put a turbulence field. I'm going to set the attenuation to 0 because I want it to be everywhere. You know that by now. Magnitude, I'm just gonna start with 50. I'm guessing, I don't know, we'll see. And I'm gonna put expressions on these 3 guys like I do in every single lesson, because I don't want to type them anymore, because I'm bored of doing the same things like that and wasting time. I'm just gonna use my little expression here. You go and type your own. There we go. I'm done with this. And I'm basically going to rename it. This is going to be my turbulence low. I'm going to make another one. There you go. And I'm going to run it again. Okay, so this is going to be my turbulence high. Just because I don't want the same values on the phase X, Y, and Z on each one of those 2 fields, what I'm going to do is just quickly tweak one of those 2. I don't care. I'm going to edit my expressions, and you may have seen me do this before. I'm just going to randomize this thing, so what it was X, now it's Z. This one is X, and this one is Y. This is a lazy way of doing this. It works for me, it should work for you. Don't worry about it. No one needs to know. Okay, frequency. Because this is my low frequency field, I'm just going to start with, I don't know, let's try 0.1 and see how it goes. And my turbulence high, let's see if a frequency of 1 is enough or not. And I'm just going to put this one at 50 as well. Let's go in and save our scene. This is lesson 24. It's done. Remember to save. And we'll see what we get. Alright, we get this. As I usually do, I let it run a few frames, so ideas will come to your mind when you see this, and you may use it for something else. This could easily be some sort of a plasma thing, or who knows, ghost-like event, or you can even use it for distortions. If you render it more transparent, then you may have something for a scary film, probably. This geometry, the black areas that you see are just interpenetrations of the geometry. So if you were to render this as it is, then you may have some issues, but because I'm going to be using it as a driver, as an emitter, I don't care. I don't mind at all. I have absolutely no problem with this. Alright, so I can see that my turbulence fields are working. You see how the turbulence pattern is evolving. I want you guys to focus on this and take a look at it for a few more times, because sometimes I see on the support group that, when you're working on the assignments for let's say the water surface using soft bodies, then I see a lot of static waves, a really slow development of the wave pattern. Or I see that on most of the assignments, sometimes when people publish them, when you guys publish them in the group, then I can see some very static turbulence fields. So animating phase X, Y, and Z is extremely important. Look at what just a basic setup that takes 30 seconds, what it can do, and all the possibilities you have. This is a very interesting deforming piece of geometry that will just do wonders for you. It's not a muzzle flash yet, but we're getting close. Right, so, okay, so I have my turbulence fields I think are working. I think I hit the right spot, but I'm not sure yet. We're gonna have to test it a little bit more and making a bit more of a muzzle flash shape. We'll see. So if you look at the video, the reference video that we have, all of them are elongated, obviously, because it's basically what's happening here is just the explosion is contained within the barrel of the gun, and the fire just comes, it's pushing the bullet away, and of course it's trying to escape out of this, well, like the cannon itself of the gun, right? So it just tends to take this shape, right? So it's a bit more elongated. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not spherical. All right. So what I'm going to do is a pretty neat trick here. Basically, let's see. I'm going to try and stop them. So I'm just going to try a little bit, actually recreate what happens for real in this gun. If you want to move this towards the gun for reference, remember that you need to move both things. All right, so I'm just going to place it closer to the gun, and this is just for testing, right? Okay, if I'm here, I'm just going to frame it, and we're going to see again, so everything should be moving fine. All right, cool. It's not a muzzle flash, but at least it's near the area. Cool. So now I'm going to create, I need to find a way to freeze these particles that are near the barrel and kind of push the rest away. Which is, like I said, is what happens in here. So the explosion happens in the chamber here. The bullet is being pushed by all this pressure being released from the explosion inside. Bullet comes out, fire comes out. Just as simple as that. So it's coming out, shooting out of the gun. So I need to find a way to lock some of this section here and then push everything away. You could start by pushing things away if you want to see. So if you can grab the particles, and we're going to push them away using a uniform field. The direction itself is actually negative z, as you can see, so it's pushing away. So no attenuation. I'm going to use nothing in x, nothing in y, and -1 in z. And we'll try. Okay. Remember that because we have a 0.5 value on the particle goal, then that's why the uniform field is not pushing them too far away. We can increase this, let's say, to 25. Okay, so you get some pushing, which is fine. Right. So I get the force working right here. What's coming next, the way I can probably see if this works, you could try a couple of things. Let's see. I'm going to try first. I think it's important, even though we're not going to render this sphere, I think it's a good idea to have a spring to kind of hold things better and give you a smoother look and a more of a coherent pattern. I'm sorry. What I mean by that is that technically here, this density is being pushed, and it just affects the areas around it. So, sections of this are connected to the surrounding areas. I'm talking about density. We're not going to use fluids in this one, at least not for now. But in terms of this shape is the way it is because air is being pushed and things are being displaced, meaning that the shape, in a way, whatever happens here, which is the density, let's say, is connected to the areas around, right? So it reacts to it. At the moment, each particle is independent from their neighbors. Like I said, so even if we're not going to render the sphere, I think it's important to have something coherent. Keep in mind what I have said before, that the little details are what makes a great film. It's what makes you a good TD. Little details. I really Yeah, I don't get the chance to talk to you guys, when you're working, or I don't know how you feel about certain things regarding our business here. Um, but I hope you don't feel sometimes like, no one's gonna see that. Why would I care? Um, don't have that attitude, right? So try don't mind. Don't It doesn't matter if you care for your job. You should care for what you do, and put some effort in there. Remember that this is something that the whole world's gonna see. Um, Something's gonna show on big screens and even bigger screens as time goes by. Um, More resolution. So it's nice to have a 4K TV at home, but keep in mind that you have to generate 4K content, meaning that it has to look beautiful, it has to look great all the time. So the little details is what's going to stand out. So thinking the way I'm thinking here, of adding a spring because I want some sort of a connectivity between the particles, and it will give me a slightly different deformation that is more physical, physically correct. And even though I'm not going to render the actual shape, it's okay, because the better the emitter works, the better the particles will look, and that's what I really care for, because that's what's actually going to be on the screen. So I think I need it. We'll see. If it looks funny, then we'll just delete it. It's no problem, but I honestly think that we're going to need this. So I'm going to have my particle selected. I'm going to create a spring using the usual wireframe, work length of 2. If you don't know this, you need to go back to my Dynamics 1. Hit create, give it a second because there's a lot of particles, and here it is. As you know, the first thing you do with the spring is hide it. Hide it, because you don't want that on your video card. It will still calculate correctly. Stiffness, I'm going to begin with 10. I don't know if it's enough. And a dampening of 1. Alright, I'm going to save again. It's a delicate times when you run these things for the first time. There we go. It's not exploding, which is great. It's holding. That's very good. If you want to see explode, then I'm sure that if you type 100 on the stiffness, you want to say goodbye to this. There it goes, there it goes. Oh, it's holding. If it holds, it's even better, because you can see the ripples now. You see ripples here and ripples there. I hope you do with the, well, there's no compression here, so there we go. You can definitely see ripples. This is cool. This is really cool. It's going to give you really nice detail. I love it. But this is what you get by using a spring. So it is necessary. I think it's great. This may break at this stiffness once we push things around a little bit more. But for now, this is a much nicer deformation. Take a look at that. All right. I like it. I'm happy. All right, cool. So next thing I need to do is find a way to lock the particles on the barrel. So for now, I just need to move these two things, and maybe the spring also. I need to move these things in a bit more center. Remember something. This is something, you're creating a system. You're creating a collection of muzzle flashes that later comp is going to be the ones taking the renders from the lighter and putting them on the right places. I'm just doing this at this position because the gun is there, and I want to have some sort of reference. But this is something you will be running at the origin of your grid. Later on, we can just move it back to where it was. We just need some sort of a scale reference. Okay, so this is fine. Let's just test it again, so you make sure that it moves correctly, and it does. Good. Great. All right, let's just come closer. So yeah, I was saying that we need to find a way to lock some of the particles that are near the barrel and let the air push the other ones around. So to do that, how do we do that? Well, it's not that hard, actually. You can actually hide the polygons at the moment, keep the particles in here. I'm going to select them. Right, and I'm going to grab all of them. We can go, let me just quickly figure this out here. It is called, it's called the, let me see, I think it's the component editor. Let me open this guy. Correct. As you may remember from Maya Dynamics 1. If you don't, go back and watch it. We talked about this when we're doing the ocean example with the soft bodies. We're using this window to quickly access attributes and particles as a list. So right now what I have here is a big collection of attributes, and all my particles, as you can see, are selected. Turns out that this thing has 6,146 particles, I believe. Yep. So very cool. All of them are selected. All of them have a goal value of a goal PP value of 1. Yep. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of them and I'm going to give them a different value. So we can say something like 0.5. So all of them now have a 0.5 goal PP value, and they have a 0.5 goal weight, as you can see right here. Here's my mouse, right? Right there. What does it mean? I'll refresh your memory because I explained this before in level 1 of my, the Power User program. Basically, these two numbers multiply each other. Goal PP is multiplied by goal weight, and that's what you're going to get. So when goal PP is 1, then basically what you type on the goal weight is what you end up getting. So goal PP being 1 and goal weight being 0.5, then you're getting a 0.5 goal weight on your particles. If you do it like I have right now, it's 0.5 multiplied by 0.5. So 0.25 is what you're getting actually of goal weight on your particles. So they're going to be a lot more free to move around, let's say. The reason I'm doing this is because now that I have this particle selected, all of them with 0.5, I'm going to grab just the ones closer to the barrel of the gun. So I'm just going to have to do something like, let's say, like this. Right? They may be too much, but I'm close. So I'm just going to hide my polygons again. Right, and I'm going to, let me just see if I do this. Okay, so I'm reducing my selections. I'm just going to get rid of some of them. Just 1 second. Go here. It's a bit uncomfortable, but okay, why it's not letting me select? There we go. All right. Yeah, it's a bit weird the way it's not letting me do it. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, now it's working. Good. It's a bit ugly. Okay. But now the area is a bit closer to the center. That's basically the ones I don't want to move. So those guys, I'm going to give a goal weight of 1. I hope you can see where I'm going with this. So I grab my particles again, and like I said, goal PP and goal weight multiply each other. So as you remember, most of the particles, pretty much all of them, have a goal weight of 0.5. Just the ones on the tip of the gun have a goal weight of 1. If I multiply that by 0.5, then I'm still going to get 0.5 of goal weight on the particles that are closer to the gun and 0.25 on the rest, which is not really what I want. What I want is to have this set to 1. So now, if you think about it, if you multiply 0.5, which is pretty much all of them, multiply by 1, then you're getting 0.5, which is what we had before. But now, the ones closer to the tip of the gun are getting a goal PP of 1 multiplied by a goal weight of 1, then you're getting 1. What it means is 100% attraction to the original sphere, the one that is static, which is unmoving, which is in the right position, and all the other particles can move freely. At this stage, it's extremely important that you save your scene, because we're going to be, testing what happens. And because we have a spring, okay, the spring could explode, the soft body. It's not like your computer is going to explode or your mind is going to burn or something, but it could, the geometry could fail, and sometimes, I don't know, depending on if you have too many things running on your machine, sometimes it happens that my just crashes. I don't know. Just to avoid that, I just prefer to save for free, right? So I'm just gonna run it and see what happens. There we go. Right, so as you can see, particles are static, and this thing is deforming and pushing forward. It's not a muzzle flash just yet, but we're extremely close. Right, so all I need to do is grab my uniform field and up this guy and see what happens. Let's see what happens. There we go. Not bad at all. I like it actually. We could help the shape of this. Right now we start with the spherical shape, so I'm going to bring back the original sphere. I'm going to scale it up in and make it a bit more muzzle flashy. Thing like that. And remember to move it back to where you want the other particles to be, the ones that are gonna be static, right? They're gonna be somewhere around this area. So let's see, I'm gonna hide this back and we'll see what happens. There we go. Okay, we're almost there. So this works. This will definitely work. But sometimes I think for the way I'm looking at it, okay, I think it works. It has nice detail. You can see why I was aiming for giving the original sphere more detail, because I knew I was going to be stretching that. Sometimes, in this case, I probably will give more detail if I could, and I can recreate this. This takes no time. But probably you will benefit from having a bit more detail, because it's a bit stretched. Second, there we go. So we could have a bit more detail in here, but this is giving me a nice shape. The thing is, to my liking, okay, I probably will mess a little bit with my turbulence fields to give, see if I can break it up a little bit more. It's a bit too smooth. So sometimes, you need sharper. Let's see, but this will work perfectly for something like this. Actually, there we go. There's a trick. I told you how it's done, right? So there you go. We're close. We're defining a shape like this, but sometimes, at least the way I would like things to see, this is better. I like this one better because it has a bit more interesting shape. It's not a big blob. Easily fixable. I'm just going to close this window. I'm just going to grab my turbulence high, the high frequency, and I'm going to see if I increase this thing, let's say 3. Let's see if I get a different result. There we go, noisier. I like this one. Very cool. Don't worry, the way I like to work on these situations, you don't need to worry too much about the speed. Don't worry about that. I will probably play Blast It just for fun. I don't really care because I can change the speed later on. I'll show you a cool trick. Actually, I've showed that to you before, but hey, I will show you again. Right, so I like this one better. We can even go crazier and see what happens if we go with 5. Check it out. It's more flamey, like, you think? I like it. I think it's cool. We could improve on these things a bit more. So now you know, just to sum up, that the frequency of the high frequency turbulence field is extremely important to give you a more dramatic flame look or flame shape. Remember that this is the outline that you will get, so you have to compare it with this, right? So we'll get some shapes a bit like that. It is noisier, but the overall silhouette, I think, is pretty regular all the time. That's the job of the turbulence field low. So I'm going to try and see what happens if I go with more magnitude. See if we can break it a bit more. Okay. Remember, you can try until it breaks. I'm going to double the magnitude. Start over and see. Okay, a bit much. Okay. That's a bit strong, and there we go. We don't want that. Check this out. This is important that it's happening. And it's good that it's happening now. You see that sometimes it moves. It moves a little bit slow. I mean, it deforms the shape. I can see it. But as you see in here, it just sometimes it goes to the bottom. There you go. It's going up. Then it goes to the back. Then it goes down and forward. Okay, so we can see that the low turbulence field, it helps, but it's evolving a bit too slow. So probably a magnitude of 200 is too much. So we need to do a couple of things. We need to go in and edit probably the expression a little bit. So we're going to go here, and we're going to try to push these values a bit more. And let's see. Right now it's just time plus 34, times plus 98, meaning that it's a bit slow on the development, right? So I'm just going to multiply it, let's say by 30. Same with this guy over here. I'm just going to grab all of it. There we go. And I'm going to multiply this guy by, I don't know, let's say 20. And the same thing with this. Second, there we go. There we go. And we're going to multiply it by, I don't know, 25. We'll try this. Basically what I'm doing here, I'm multiplying this by a big number. So it's going to evolve a lot faster. I think it's too fast, but we'll see. There you go, you see? I'm accelerating what was happening before. I'm definitely seeing that my magnitude is a bit high, of course, but it does work, right? So all we need to do now is adjust it. We're going to adjust this to 100, so it doesn't go that far. All right. I'm going to try something here. I'm going to put this, because my high frequency is set to 5. My low frequency probably doesn't have to be 0.1. It can be probably 1. Still, it's the lowest of the two frequencies. There we go. So it's helping me break the shape a bit more, you see? There we go. This is better. So we can go forward one frame at a time, and you can get different shapes. There we go. This is much better. I like it. All right, cool. So there you go. You see how I fixed it. I made the turbulence field evolve a bit faster for the low frequency. And so basically what I did was change the speed of how it moved up and down and forward. But because it was moving too far away, it was because my frequency was a bit too low for this case. So I just set it to 1, and the high frequency is set to 5. So it is definitely working. This proves that having a low and high frequency turbulence approach, like I do in pretty much every lesson, is extremely important. But it also proves that when I say low frequency, you don't have to always use values below 1, for example. It doesn't matter. It just has to be lower than the high frequency. That's all. There has to be a clear difference. So to sum up, the low frequency turbulence field will give you big changes, just like we did with waves in Maya Dynamics 1. It gives you big changes here, big deformation of, let's say, the silhouette, the overall shape. And the high frequency has to be really high, set to 5, and it's just breaking internally the shape. So we look at it from the top. That's what we get. Don't worry, this is not a flamethrower. This is not going to be renderable, but this is going to give us pretty cool shapes. We could play a little bit more if you want to be more, let's say, elegant about your approach. The uniform field right now is just blowing at a constant rate. Right now we have a magnitude of 50. We're not changing that the slightest, right? We could do something about it probably. We can just variate that. We're going to create a new expression. We're going to take the magnitude of this, and we can test a couple of things. Let's see. Let's just say that with 50 we have a good push forward, and we want to play between 50, or let's say between 40 and 60, right? Those two values, right? We can do something like this. We can just say the noise of time, for example. The noise of time is a value that I've used before, a variable that I used before. Is built in within Maya, and if you don't know what it is, you know what I'm going to say. I know I'm repetitive, but I have to be, because people sometimes don't listen to me. If you don't know what noise of time will do, you need to go back to Maya Dynamics 1 and Maya Dynamics 2, where it's used a lot. Noise of time is basically a curve that it resembles the sine or cosine curves. It goes from -1 to 1 over time. But the thing is that the sine and cosine are smooth curves. They just move up and down. The noise function is, it has the same boundaries, let's say -1 and 1, but the trajectory, let's say, of the curve itself is very noisy within that range. So if I leave it like this, it's not going to work for me, because it's just going to give me magnitudes between -1 and 1, which is not really what I want. I want something that goes from 40 to 60. So how do I get to that point? Well, it's not that bad. Basically, one thing I need to do for sure, I don't want any negative values in here, so I'm just going to have to do the absolute value of the entire thing. There you go. What happens here? What's the absolute value? If you don't know that, you need to go and read a little bit about basic math from middle school. The absolute value of a negative number is a positive number. So now it ranges from 0 to 1. Careful, because basically turning the bottom part of the curve, the one that goes below 0, to a positive number means that my frequency will just be twice as fast. So right now I have a result that is faster than time. Meaning time means that it changes every 24 frames. Now it's just every 12 frames. But don't worry about that. If I'm confusing you, it's okay. Don't worry. You don't need to, don't expect to learn these things by heart right away. So it takes a bit of time. That's why you can watch over and over again these lessons. But right now, basically, I have something that goes from 0 to 1. That's good. Now we can say, we'll multiply this by, let's say, if we want something from 40 to 60, then we can multiply this. We can add to this, let's say, plus 40. So what do we have now? We have a curve that we're pushing everything 40 units above. So now we have something that goes from 40 to 41. We can test it here if you want. You hit create. There's no errors. And now you can see we have 40.259. We can rewind 40. So you can see that it's changing here. It's just my decimals, right? So it's close. I said 40. We have the lower value, right? So we got that. You can start there, but we can try a couple of other things. Let's see. So basically, what we need to do is now range between 40 and 60. So we could take the noise of time, which is from 0 to 1, yeah, and we can multiply this by 20. Hit edit, and now you can see that we have 42. Let me just rewind here. 45. Let me see. 44, 43, 42. We'll keep going. Let's see if it goes higher. 47, 48, 49, 50, 53, 54, 55. There we go. Okay, it's going to reach 60 at some point. Let's just recap everything, because you might be like, huh, what? No worries. Let's just go one bit at a time. Noise of time. A curve that goes from -1 to 1 in a noisy way. That's what I want. I don't really want a smooth up and down motion. I want something chaotic. This is a machine gun. I want something that changes quickly. So I get my noise of time. A curve from -1 to 1. if I just multiply right away by 20, right? What I'm doing is extending the range from -20 to 20. Okay, that's good. But I don't want negative values. That's why I'm doing the absolute value of the entire thing. An absolute value, like I just said, it takes away the negative portion and it turns it into a positive number. So now it would range from 0 to 20. Yep. And because I want from 40 to 60, basically I'm just adding 40 to it. Right? So when the result of the absolute value of the noise of time multiplied by 20 is 0, if I add 40, that's my lower value, my lower boundary. When the absolute value of the noise of time multiplied by 20 returns 20, and I add 40, is 60. So that's my higher boundary. So there we go. I think it works. Hit edit, no mistakes. Close it, and now you get, and I don't know if it's going to work, it's going to be helpful or not, but let's just say first and try it. Right, it's very slight, the result, because it's ranging from very close, numbers that are close to each other. I can see it that sometimes it stretches a little bit more. We can push it to test, right? So we can do between 40 and, let's say, instead of doing from 40 to 60, we can do something like this. Right? And actually, let me just think something here. It could be 20, that could be between 60 and 100. Oh, I'm going to have right now, it's going to be stronger. Right, it's pushing it a bit forward, a bit more. Okay. So that's good. There we go. Okay, this could work. If you want to change the range, then you play with these numbers. It's as simple as that. If you forgot how it works, then when the absolute value of the noise of time is 0, right, then you get 80. If you want, and then if the result of this is 20, then you get 100. So this is between 80 and 100. If you want something different, let's say if you want between, let's say 40 and 80, then all you need to do is change here to 40 and here to 40, for example. And I will run it one more time. Noise of time goes from -1 to 1. If you multiply by 40, it goes like this. It will go from -40 to 40. If you run the absolute value of this, it will go from 0 to 40, and if you add 40, it will go from 40 to 80, right? Hit edit, now you get a bigger range. I like to save my scenes when I'm testing these things. And there we go. This is 40 to 80, so sometimes you're gonna go twice as hard in the stretch. It's subtle, but it works. Cool. So I think I'm done creating these shapes in here. So how do we proceed with this? If you want to make this a rig. What I'm going to do is, because you don't really want to be handing this over to an ATD or an animator or even a compositor. You don't want to be handing over scenes that they don't understand when it comes to turbulence fields and expressions and things like that. You want to give them basic geometry. We need to find a way to get rid of the entire dynamics that we just did, but retain a deforming surface. And that's what we're going to use. We're going to bake this surface. We're going to cache it out. So basically, I'm going to grab my geometry. Don't use, I don't know. You could use Alembic, but sometimes the old stuff that works just don't need to be changed. I like my geometry cache because what I used back in the day, it always works and it's perfectly fine. I think it's a good idea to name your things a little bit better. So we're just going to call this muscle flash, let's say static. Because I'm lazy, I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to put it that. And we're going to call it dynamics. The particles don't matter because we're not going to cache them. I'm going to save it again. Select my geometry, go to cache, geometry cache, create new one. Naming is a good idea because the cache will have the name. And I'm going to run 1000 frames. They run very quickly, so you don't need to worry about this. In 1000 frames, you're not going to get 1000 different muzzle flashes. All right? We're going to get, I don't know how many. I don't know, 100 probably, or 50. Because you want to, you'll see, but if you want to have lots and lots of them, you're going to have to run a bigger cache. It's okay because it's not going to fill your computer. It's not like you're running a fluid cache or you're running a text file. So it doesn't matter. You can run 4, 5, 10,000 frames. It's not going to matter. It's going to be very, very light. I'm going to hit create. Alright, so we're running, as you can see, on 133, 161, so it's moving very quickly. Once we're done caching, we're going to save this scene as something else because we're going to delete all the dynamics. We don't need them anymore. Right, so it's almost done. There's no point in pausing the video because it's very quickly. All of these you see are different shapes that we're going to get. All of those are different muzzle flashes. So it's going to be awesome. There we go, almost done, and it's done. There you go. Alright, so I'm going to rewind, and I'm going to save this scene as lesson 24 instead of start cache. Sorry. There we go. Okay, this geometry is cached, and I promise you that if you go like this, you're not going to waste anything. There you go, that's my cached geometry, and voila, there we go. No dynamics involved. So even if, for example, you hand this scene over to a lighter, because they have a shader that will just make geometry look like flames, because it's not that far-fetched, it's not that crazy to think about that way, then you can give them this scene and he will be perfectly happy because he doesn't have to deal with dynamics or things that are going to make the scene work slower or confuse him or scare him. He has a deforming piece of geometry. That's exactly what he wants. So don't be surprised if you're doing this at a studio and you use my technique up to this point and they say that's more than enough, just hand it over, we'll take care of it from here. It could happen, and hopefully it will happen. I think it's perfectly valid to render this thing with a fire texture. Like I said at the beginning, it's something that will show up for 1 or 2 frames only, so I don't see why we should spend much more time on this. I will continue a bit further with you guys on this because I want to give you other options, but the more I think about it, I think I'm more convinced that let's say the responsibilities of an effects DD will end right here at this stage. They could. If I was the owner of the studio, I will definitely put my money there instead of venturing into the world of particles and fluids. Well, it could be okay, but I think it will look much better, especially with today's render engines. Something like this will be faster. So anyway, we'll continue because we're learning dynamics and we have to. So I have my emitter, so that's great. At this stage, I'm going to play blast it and see how it develops because it could be too fast or it could be too slow. So we need to see here. So I'm just going to go in and do a quick play blast. Because you don't have dynamics, now it's a very fast process to deal with. I'm going to pause the video for 1 second and I'll be right back when this is done. Alright, the play blast is done, so let's see together if this is too fast. It's not bad. It doesn't matter because, like I said before, we're not going to be rendering this geometry. And you will see how I'm going to be using it, so it's not really important how it evolves from one shape to another. I don't really care too much about it. But I think it's fine. I'm just going to show you a couple more tricks, which will be useful. So I think it's fine. That's 1,000 frames. Um, let's say that you do this and you want to, I don't know, let's say that you need to have more frames. Let's say we cached 1,000 frames. Let's say that you think it's developing too quickly, or basically you just don't want to go back to the other scene and run the cache again. But you want to have more frames to generate more muzzle flashes. Remember that I said that with 1,000 frames we'll probably generate, I don't know, 100. I don't know. We need to see, but it's not going to be 1,000, for sure. And let's say that a good library should have probably 1,000 muzzle flashes, because if you have 100 guns and they shoot 10 times, then you run out of choices. So it's not that crazy to think of 1,000 muzzle flashes, or probably 2,000 or 3,000 muzzle flashes. I don't know. So if that happens to you and you want to have more frames, or you want to slow down your development, the way it develops. By the way, this is a pretty cool shape. Imagine a muzzle flash with this shape. This is great. What you can do is manipulate your cache file, which I've done before as well in other lessons. So basically what you're going to be doing here is changing the scale of things. So let's say that you have a scale of 1 is what you cached originally. Let's try with a scale of 2. So now it will develop twice as slow. But what you did is actually stretched out your range. So you had 1,000 frames originally. Because you stretched them out, you should be able to get, as you can see here, 2,000 frames. So you slowed it down by half, but you got twice as many frames. It's valid. I'm not going to play blast the entire thing, but we can play blast a few frames and see. There we go. Let's just let it run a little bit longer. All right, cool. Pause it here, and let's see. There we go. You still get your interesting shapes. Everything is working fine, but now you get 2,000 frames of cache, which is pretty cool. In terms of giving, let's say, power to the people, when you hand this over to an animator, you can tell them where you can control your speed of the way it develops here with the scales. So you can do whatever you want. You can actually shrink it down if you needed to. Right? Of course, as you can imagine, so you will end up with 500 frames only. Then also works out. You get a lot more noise, a lot faster motion. Okay. Let's see how it looks. There we go. So it works. You can see now that you can let them decide what they want. I'm just going to stick to my original look. 1,000 frames. If you don't want to start in a spherical shape like this, it's not a problem. You can probably just say offset your start to, let's say, 20. And now you have on your first frame the shape that you had on frame 20. And of course, you're not going to get that far. You're just going to get to 980 and it will stop. But I can live with that. So I'm going to do 980. Or you could scale it for, I don't know, 1.1 and then you will get a 1,100 frames, right? Or you can just do something like this. And if my math is correct, then you should get 1,000 frames again. So it's very slight change that allows you to start from already a developed deformation and end up with your 1,000 frames anyway. So I'm very happy with this. I'm going to save it. Done. Next step, very quickly, this is actually the easy part, is just going to emit particles, regular particles. Don't worry about these guys. regular particles. We're going to emit from object. We're going to use a surface emitter as always. I don't know about the rate, but I'm just going to start with anyway. 10,000 particles. And I'm going to hit create. There's my particles. I can call these guys muscle parts for particles. I don't know. If you want to be really clean here, so you can just say muscle emitter. Everything is clean, everything is nice. Saved. Perfect. So I get my particles over here. What we're going to do here is basically these particles are going to show up suddenly, lots of them. They're going to just one frame they're not there, the next frame they're all there. They live for 1 or 2 frames and just go away. And they go away pretty much almost like all at once. Because if I go frame by frame, one frame, they're there. Next frame, they're not there. One frame, I'm pointing with my finger, sorry, here. One frame, they're here. Next frame develops. Third frame, they're gone. Right? One frame, gone. One frame, gone, gone. Quickly. Lots of particles, very quickly, for a very short period of time. Yeah. Well, let's do that. We get our particles. We don't want them to move. All I want is them to be born on the surface. In this part, you will be very thankful or very happy that you paid attention to the very first lesson of the FX Power User program. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? That when we did the galaxy together, we emitted particles of a plane with no velocity. We inherited the color of a texture, and we got a galaxy. Now, using the exact same technique, you're working on Avatar, making thousands of dollars, using the same technique. Please remember those things. Remember about recycling. Remember about giving value to basic concepts that are very, very important that you're going to use your entire career. You need it. I'm going to do exactly that. I believe I have on my Hypershade a texture already of fire. That's something that I downloaded from the web in a material. It came from, I had already created that. Basically, this is just a Lambert with a texture applied. That's all. That's my texture. You can actually view it. Let's see if it opens up. Actually, it looks like it did. There you go. That's the texture I'm using. I just got it from the web. Just look for flames or fire, and then you will find something like that. I assigned that to the Lambert, so I'm going to, for visual reference, assign that in here. Right. And I believe I did something stupid, so I'm just going to, rewind. And let's see. Let me just double check my texture. Cool, everything's fine. I'm just gonna grab this and I'm going to assign the material. But now I got transparency. So I'm just gonna go back a few steps because I was just dumb. I just dropped it, and I think I dropped it in the wrong place. So let's see. I'm just rewinding, making sure that I didn't go too far. Okay, everything is good. This shader anyway got busted, so I'm just going to get rid of it and make a new one from scratch so you guys can see. Anyway, doesn't matter. Grab my geometry, right click on it. It's easy stuff. Create a, let's say, favorite material because it's already there. I'm going to create a Lambert. There it is. I'm just going to assign this Lambert to this geometry. Done. And on the shader itself, I'm just going to plug in my texture, which I believe is already here. There we go. So I'm just going to go in and plug it. Done. As a side note, can you see that I made a mistake by probably throwing the shader directly into the geometry? It should work, I guess. I made a mistake. Somehow something happened. My shader went just transparent. I I dropped it again, it went transparent. I tried to go back and didn't fix it. I'm not going to waste, I'm using the word waste, my time trying to figure out what happened to the poor shader. I'm just going to get rid of it and create it again. It takes 30 seconds. You're not going to take 30 seconds trying to debug it. You just throw it away and make a new one. It's not a problem. Right, done. Let me just get rid of this thing in my desk. Okay. Right, I just have this texture, well, for fun. For fun, I mean, I'm going to need it for my emitter, right? But I think it's a good idea to see it. I'm going to make sure, and this is not my strong suit, but I'm just going to grab my UVs and I'm going to do a, let's say, a spherical mapping, just to make sure that my shape has some coherent UVs. There we go. Nicer. That's good. Doesn't matter. I mean, this changes so quickly that it's alright. It changes shape. So right now, as you can see, we get that. Don't worry about the particles. I'm just saying, asking you to please look at this. Particles, right? I don't want them to move. I don't want them to do that. I just want them to be born on the position. I mean, whatever shape you have, I want it to be made of particles. Eventually, I'm just going to hide this. I don't need to see it. So for that, I'm going to grab my emitter and I'm going to make sure that my speed is set to 0. I just want particles on a particular shape. Right now it's going to be a bit hard to see. You already, you have seen this piece of geometry deformed long enough. I'm just going to grab it and I'm just going to make sure that I delete any layers that I don't need. That's the machine gun. We should be organized, something like that. Okay, a machine gun layer, and then I'm gonna have create a layer from the selected, and I'm gonna call this and flash. Save it, and I'm gonna hide. So right now, all I'm gonna get are particles. Right now, it looks like a big blob because you're emitting particles all the time, and this shape is changing. So basically, you get a deforming shape that is dropping particles with no speed. So that's what you get. That's not really what you want. What you want is for these particles, first of all, to live a constant value, because I want all of them to be to die at the same time. And your lifespan is not even going to be 1 second. 1 second is 24 frames, as you guys saw. They live for 2 frames at the most. So probably you can just say 0.1 and you're being generous. That is 2.4 frames. Okay, you can barely see them, but that's good. I'm going to hide my muzzle flash. There they are, but they're very few. So I'm going to grab my muzzle flash emitter and I'm going to go in and bump it up a lot more, 100,000 particles. There we go, we're getting closer. You see, you can definitely read the shape. We could even go a bit higher. Let's just go in, okay, try to double this. Rewind, let me save. Every time you make a big change like that, it's better to save. 200,000. Doesn't mean that you're going to have 200,000 particles. Remember that you have particles that live for very few frames. So if I just grab my particles, I have actually, well, 20,011, right? As you can see, so 10%, which actually makes sense because it's 10% of the lifespan of a particle. So the rate is particles per second. So if the particles were to live a second, then you end up with 200,000. They live 10% of a second, so you get 10% of 200,000, which is 20,000. So a bit predictable, so it's good. Perfect. We could go higher. I'm seeing before that after you go over 1 million on your rate, it could get a bit slower. So you need to find ways to deal with that. But there we go. That's probably 40,000 particles. Okay, cool. We get that. It looks at the moment like a flamethrower more than a muzzle flash. We're going to fix that. Don't worry about it. But before I do that, I want to go and grab my emitter and output rendering. This is very basic. Like I said, first lesson of the Flex Power user. If this is uncharted waters to you, or this is new to you, then you're definitely in the wrong lesson. You should go back. No worries, no shame on that. I'm gonna grab my texture. You know this already. Particle color, inherit color. I know the warning. I haven't even looked down, but I know that my particles don't have RGB PP, which I need to add in order to get color. I'm gonna do a per particle and add it. And now, what do you think? Particles with color. Good. Next step. This is basic. I'm not going to be stopping and explaining why they look so cool. You know that already. Alright, great. It's a flamethrower at the moment. It's not really, or it's like a candle, actually. But there you go. That's how you do a candle, probably. You see how you get more than one thing? It's true. It may sound like a joke, but I'm not joking. I mean, I always say that my classes are not recipes. You're learning a bunch of techniques or a procedure, right? A thought process that will give you a muzzle flash, but it will also give you, like it looks to me kind of like a candle or a torch or many other things. So it's not recipes. You have to learn the techniques and then use them for many other things. All right, cool. But for the muzzle flash, you want things to pop. So you want the emitter to pop on and off and on and off, okay, quickly, for you to get a result that resembles a bit more of a, well, some machine gun firing or something, right? So we're going to have to mess with our emitter rate, because right now it's very uniform. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, let's just say that we have right now 400,000 particles. We don't know if it's enough, but I'm going to make an expression. Okay, I'm going to grab my emitter rate, and it's going to be something similar to what we did with the shape, with the uniform field. When we were pushing things, we were pushing this shape within a range, a noisy range between 40 and 80, for example. Well, we're going to be doing something similar right now. So what I'm going to do is just say the noise of time. Let's say noise of time. I explained that not long ago, so you know what it does. Negative 1 to 1, a noisy curve. That's not a problem, no mistakes. You get a very crappy rate. You know that you needed something in the lines of the 400,000 particles. Now you get a range between negative 400,000 and 400,000. You don't want negative numbers, so you want the absolute value. Well, let's just skip this part. Let's just do something a little bit different so you learn something else. Basically, you get this. So if you get this result, let's just move to the side and see what it does. Okay, they're there and they're gone. They're there and they're gone. All right, so it is starting to work. Starting to give you something that comes on and off. Look, I'm just not touching anything. You can see it sometimes it's just gaps, and there are big gaps and small gaps. The problem is that the emitter is on for too long. There you go. Imagine the curve. Remember the curve is going from negative 400,000 to 400,000. So sometimes, when the moments when you don't have any particles visible, is because the emitter is within the negative range of your noise. But what I want is something that pops up a lot faster than that. Right, so how do I speed that up? How do I go from what I have to something faster? Right now I have the noise of time. Here's the key. time is, remember that is a variable that is built in within Maya that goes from, that goes from 0 to 1 every 24 frames. I mean, it adds up 1. So from frame 0 to frame 24, the value of time will go from 0 to 1. Then from frame 24 or 25 to 48, it will go from 1 to 2 and so on. So the word time itself, it is what is driving the frequency of this curve. So if you want to make it happen faster, the emitting of particles and the empty spaces, all you need to do is multiply this by something. You're accelerating time. Right now, time is 10 times faster. Okay, so I'm going to put this down here. I'm going to rewind and play, and it's faster. It's getting closer to a muzzle flash. The problem I can see right now is that I'm getting, I want the emissions to really pop. I don't want them to go from let's say from 0 to 400,000. I want it to go from 300,000 to 400,000 particles. So I want to use, let's just try to find, just try to help here. Illustrate this better. Let me just, there we go. This Maya noise function, it should be a curve in here. There we go. This is good. This is the noise function. This is what well, every time you use the expressions that I'm doing, noise, it goes from 1 to -1. But it's actually, this one's stretched out. It goes from 2 to -2, as I can see here, if these things are 1 unit long, right? But there you go. And this is what's happening here, right? This is the noise, up and down in an erratic way. What happens is everything below the line here, everything below 0, okay, all this section here is what gives you empty spaces with no particles. Everything above 0 is the emitter turning on and off. The problem is that I don't want to go from 0 to 400 back to 0. What I want is just the peak of each curve. So it's almost like I want to cut it all the way here. Okay? Or in a way, it's almost like if I were to take the entire curve, okay, everything, and just translate it down, so I get more empty spaces or more stuff below 0 in just the tip of the curve right here. We could probably, let me just see. Well, that's not what I want. What I want is just the image. I want to, let's say, let me see if I can open it directly. No, I want to save it. Oh, let's just save it here, Maya noise. I just want to show what I mean. Well, actually, you know what? I could do it right here, just like this. So right now I get my curve. What I want is just to displace it down. Look at the bottom of my screen and just keep these bits, just the tips. That will allow me to, it will allow the emitter to pop on and off with a high rate right away. So how do I do this? How do I take this entire curve and translate it down? Well, it's actually quite simple. You can take this noise of time, for example, which is the curve. Noise of time multiplied by 10. Remember that the time multiplied by 10 is just to give it some speed. And I'm just going to take this and let's say, for example, less than, so I'm going to subtract 0.7. What am I doing here? I'm taking a curve, okay, this curve right here, which is a curve that goes from -1 to 1, and I'm subtracting 0.7. So what is it going to be? Now it's going to be between -1.7 and 0.3. I'm just translating down that curve. Just that. By that, the portion that is above 0 is very small. It's just 0.3. Still multiplied by 400,000, so I'm still going to get a high rate, but I'm not going to get that progression from 0 to 400,000 back to 0. I'm going to get just the very, very tip of the curve. So I'm just going to pause this. I'm going to edit. I get no mistakes, and let's see the difference here. Pop, 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 empty spaces, and the particles just show up. Yes, it's not as many particles as before, but that's very quick to fix. But the important thing is that, there we go. You see, you get them to pop up and disappear quickly. That's what I want. All we need to do is just fix the actual amount of particles that come out. So 400,000 may not be enough. So I'm just going to go with 1 million. Rewind and save it. There we go. Pop, pop. We get more. We could increase the multiplier. We can try it. Instead of 1 million, let's say 2 million and see how it goes. All right, there we go. Beautiful. And just to help me illustrate this better, I'm just going to go, instead of points, I'm going to go with streaks. Let's see if it makes a difference. And it's interesting that this happens, right? You rewind, you hit play, and nothing happens. And I'm doing this on purpose, of course. I want this to happen here. If I had you in front of me, I will ask you, why is that happening? You will think a wild variety of reasons. They go from my particles got messed up, or my Maya is acting funny, or my computer is breaking, or Autodesk is a bunch of bastards that need to be, punished, or Houdini is better, or RealFlow is better, or Cinema 4D is better. All these variations. You will go crazy and figure out what the hell's going on. My scene is very slow, but I don't see anything, and you will start to freak out, and you will forget something extremely basic that I taught you on lesson 3 of the FX Power User program, which is streaks change their length based on their speed. I'll give you a second there to chew that on. When we did the rain example, we used streaks, and I said back then that the particles will get longer or shorter depending on the speed that they have. And what did I do to the emitter at the very beginning of this part? I took the speed value and I took it to 0, right? Yeah, right. You remember that, right? Okay. Means that these particles are born in a particular position with no speed, and then they die very quickly. If they have no speed, they have no length if you use streaks. Simple as that. How do we fix this? How do we do it? Well, we can grab the particles and we can give them a little speed, but not in a random way. Why don't we try to inherit factor of 0.1? You should know this by now, what inherit factor does. Basically takes velocity from the emitter and it puts it onto the particle. We'll see. You can try this and it may work, and yes, it does work. It's a little bit of speed. You don't want too much. I prefer to use inherit factor than what you will do if you're learning. You have not much experience yet. When I said about the speed, you will think, oh, I'm going to grab the emitter and I'm going to put my speed back on to 1. You're going to break the beautiful shapes that you created already. Because putting the speed to 1 is just going to shoot the particles in any random direction. That's not what you want. You want to try to keep the very cool deformation that you have. So speed I wouldn't use. I would take the particles and say inherit from the emitter the velocity, because this geometry is deforming quickly, is deforming very nicely, and it will give you a very cool pattern of velocities, I think. And you can still see that the shapes are maintained. I can easily read them. I don't have enough particles yet. I will fix that in a minute, but the particles don't really move too much. It gives them a little bit of life, which is interesting. A little bit, not too much. You could test it. It's free to test. You can inherit 100%, and then you get longer streaks that look kind of funny. That's not what you want, right? It looks messed up. You want a little bit of it. 0.1 is okay. There we go. You will say, well, yeah, Luis, but that's not enough particles. That's not a problem. You can fix it either by changing the emitter, the expression, or you can, if it works for you, just for me, just for fun, I'll just show you something different. I will just go with multi-streaks, right? And let's see if I get 10 times more particles, but my multi-radius, I'm going to reduce it. You know this because you watched the first level. Let me just go frame by frame. There we go. Just gonna see if I reduce this a bit more. There we go. That looks good. And then you play with your streaks as you want. You can just make them a little bit longer, force it a tiny bit. There we go. And make this guy's fade like this. And then I'll let you play with opacities and things like that. Doesn't really matter. But right now you get a three-dimensional muzzle flash that works really nicely. I'm going to play blast it. Alright, probably going to emit a bit more particles. So I'm just going to go in and try 3 million here. Let's see how it looks. Let me just save it. Play it. There we go. Very cool. I love it. I'm going to play blast it quickly. The interesting bit and the reason why I put that expression on the emitter here, and I know that probably was a bit confusing to some of you, but that takes practice. Don't worry about it. Look at it, try to understand it. But doing this section here, moving that curve, that noise curve down, and just keeping the very top, or the very tip of the curve, is key. Not only gives you a big pop on the emission, it goes from nothing to everything in one frame, but it also gives you more time in between muzzle flashes, empty spaces, which you're going to need, because the idea is that you're going to run the simulation, right? I have, as you saw, I can run it for 2,000 frames with no problem. You will run your simulation, you know, hand that over to a lighter, or probably you will render yourself and you will just let it run overnight. And those empty spaces between one flash and the other is perfect, because then the compositor can just use ranges of the render and place them around. So that's what's going to give them a library without you having to run 1,000 different render jobs, for example. You will just run one render job with 2,000 frames and end up with a whole bunch of muzzle flashes. So that's very, very important. This tiny little thing is going to help you a lot with that. Especially not using an absolute value here. I'm just looking at something here that I'm missing. Oh no, I'm fine. I thought I was missing a parenthesis here, but no. So yeah, basically that's very, very important. So I'm just gonna save it one more time. Let's play blast it, or a few frames at least. Let's just see. Very cool. From this point forward, I will leave it up to you if you wanted to emit fluids out of this, or you just want to render the particles. I think if you render the particles, it will look very cool. You give them some motion blur. I will leave that up to you. You could also try, as an assignment I'm talking about, you could just, as always, just recreate the one I have here, but I'm expecting something more from you. You could experiment by rendering the geometry itself that we generated, the soft body. Try that with the texture and see how it looks. I just want to say that not all of the muzzle flashes being generated by this system are going to be usable. Some of them just going to throw away, but I think it's a good compromise. Very quickly, you just let it run over and over again, and you will end up with, I don't know, you probably, it's like taking pictures, right? You just take a whole bunch and you just select the ones you like, the best ones. But this is something, as you can see, is it's automatic. That's done. You can let that run for 100,000 frames if you want it. So it's very cool. So there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there you go. You keep counting. We'll go frame by frame. That's 1, done. Let's just see. Let's keep going forward, 1 frame at a time. Okay, 1. There we go. It's gone. Let me just see. Waiting for the next one. Alright, empty spaces. Those are going to be black render. So here it is. 1 frame, 2 frames, 3 frames. It's gone. I think it's good. Okay, perfect. So I hope everything is clear. Give it a shot. See how that goes. As always, try to push it forward. Try to make it even better. Okay? Put your own touch on this. Make a little control if you want to. But yeah, that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next class. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Bye.